Icon series.
Morning children. So in the previous class we have started to learn something about the first aeroplane. We have learned about how interested the people were to fly for the first time in the air, and what were the attempts they made with the different kinds of wings and how they failed, and the efforts of two brothers, Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright from America, in making different kinds of gliders, testing them and all, isn't it? So we have also come to know that in 1900 they made first unmanned glider, which was successful. And after being successful, see, they had been spending a lot of time observing different kinds of birds, how their wings arch, isn't it? I've told this also. Right? So all these kinds of things they had been observing so vigorously, implementing them. They were not getting with good results, changing the patterns. Right? So they had been doing all these efforts for years and years without being discouraged by the failures that they have to face. And in 1900, they were able to make the glider have its successful flight. It was a 50-pound weight glider which had a wingspan of 17 feet. Isn't it? The tip of one wing to the other wing was 17 feet. So, inspired by this, there was no limit for the joy that they had when they were able to make the first successful glider flight, and they thought of making bigger ones. So, in 1901, they made a bigger glider which weighed 100 pounds, but it couldn't take off. It couldn't take off. The wings couldn't lift the flight, so it spinned on the ground and collapsed. Okay, so we have seen the lesson up to this point in the previous class, and now we will learn about what happened next. So they were inspired by one positive result in 1900, and then they made a great effort in creating another one in 1901. It didn't work. Okay, but they were not troubled by this disappointment. So when this 100-pound glider that they made in 1901 couldn't lift into the air, they became disappointed. They become disheartened. They become they lost interest, kind of a thing. My God, what? For one full year, they were putting all the effort, money, time, work, things, everything into building this, and it couldn't lift. But I told you in the other class, the previous class, they were not such kind of people who will throw the work aside. What they did was, they tried, studied, and understood why this particular thing didn't go into the air. Why this 100-pound machine didn't get into the air. So they were extremely disappointed, but they overcame it. They studied the problem. If you fix that problem, it will fly, no? Huh? We are not able to write with a pencil. We checked what is the problem. Yeah, it's a nib. The lead part is broken. If we sharpen it again, lead will come, we can write. So identify the problem part, find the solution for that, and then we can work it out. Right? So they have this love for adventure, doing these kinds of strange things, adventurous things. Right? So they were enthusiastic. They were always thinking positive, identifying the mistakes and rectifying this, and this adventure. Okay, we have to fly. We have to fly. There is no other thing coming across it. So this particular spirit of them helped them to come out of all these kinds of failures, and they decided to build a new and improved one. So they understood that, okay, for a 17 feet long wings can lift a glider of something around 50 pounds. So if we increase the load of it, increase the weight of it, increase the size of it, then there should be other adjustments also. Okay, so now what they decided was that they decided to add a tail also. Okay, they decided to add a moving tail also to that bigger one. So in the 1901, they faced another failure, but they still decided to make a bigger one with a tail. Okay, and they made it in 1902. In 1902, they made another big glider with a wing span of 32 feet. So the first one they flew successfully was of 17 feet. Now they have doubled it. How much? Almost double, na? Yeah, 17 is 34. This is 32. Right? And it has a tail also. Okay, so the new machine that they have made in 1902 had a movable tail, and a wingspan of 32 feet. Movable tail means it's not fixed there. They can move it. Okay, if it is fixed, it cannot move. But this is adjustable. Okay, now this tail was basically for the purpose of balancing it. They added this movable tail for balancing it, because when they observed first the birds, they observed only the wings of it. Second time when they started observing the birds, they saw usually the tail part of the birds will be folded up, but when they fly, the feathers come up and they get spread. So it's not just the wings, the tails are also used by the birds to fly, to balance themselves. And when they have to go up or when they have to come down, this folds up. When they have to turn, there are some other changes also happening. So they decided the tail also play, they got this idea that the tail of a bird also play an important role when the bird is in the air. Okay, so they decided to try that with this gliders that they make, and they add a movable tail, right? So they added a movable tail. Okay, now they tried this one, the third one with the wingspan of 32 feet and a movable tail. That was a successful one again. Okay, now they understood. See, when they made the first glider, the learning that they had, the understanding that they had, the point that they have understood was that controlling the flight, controlling the plane, controlling the glider in the air is the most important part of making aeroplanes successful. Isn't it? Now, with the addition of a movable tails and improvements with the shapes of the wings, yesterday we saw usually the wings were, with the cutting edge. Now they have bended it a bit so that they can control it. So with making these kinds of improvements and adjustments, now they were able to make control. Now they were able to control these gliders or flights in the air. Okay, now with the 1902 experiment with a bigger aeroplane or a glider which had a wingspan of 32 feet and a movable tail became successful, now they decided another thing. What was that? We will design a glider which will have an engine in it. So until now, all these were just like kites. There was no engine in that. There was no engine in that. Some strings or sticks will be there. If there is a man sitting inside it, they will be controlling it. There was no engine in that. It was not powered by a motor. Okay. So after making this particular glider flight successful, now they decided we will make a motor powered aircraft. Right? So now they started the efforts on establishing or making the first motor powered aircraft. Okay? So they have to design an engine, and this engine should have different kinds of controls so that they can make it successful. Right? And they designed a motor and a new aircraft also. Aircraft means aeroplane, which will have the facility to have the motor one side, a man to sit over there to control it and all. Okay, and when they made the first one, it was 700 pounds heavier. Means the engine itself was of the weight of 700 pounds. So when they made the first glider, the biggest one was 100 pounds, isn't it? The glider itself was 100 pounds. Now, the engine itself is 700 pounds. And they named this Flyer. Okay, so the first engine that was made by the Wright brothers to lift an aircraft into the air was named Flyer, and it was 700 pounds heavier. Okay, now how they have to make the adjustments in that design of the aeroplane? They made everything. They made everything, and now they decided to check it. Okay, so now they understood that the engine should reach a particular level, only then this aircraft can lift. Okay, the engine of this should reach a particular level, only then it can lift. So that engine should reach a speed. Okay, a speed, only then it will go into the air. If they fail to reach that speed, it will fall down. It will fall down. So what they did was, they made a downhill track. Downhill track means, for example, if this is a hill, okay, they made a track like this. They made a road like that. And now they kept this Flyer here. The Flyer fixed aircraft here, and this is a slope, no? It's a slope. And when we are riding bicycles also, slope region we will go much faster, no? In the same way, the Flyer will come down this hill, and by the time it reaches here, the engine will reach that air speed. Air speed means the amount of speed that this engine should have to take it into the air. Air speed means the amount of speed that the engine should reach to take it into the air. So they made a downhill track so that the engine can reach that particular speed. Okay, and this definitely helped the Flyer to achieve that particular speed. And what was the result? What was the result? Attempt 1. We will check this. This is very interesting. Okay, attempt 1. Result, failure. They made a new aircraft, they designed this Flyer engine and an aircraft which can fix this Flyer engine inside it. They did everything. They kept a downhill track for that, attempted the first one, failure. Second attempt, failure. Not only a failure, the flight crashed. What happened? Yeah, it reached here, dim, flat. Even the aeroplane was damaged. Even the aeroplane was damaged. Then they made the third attempt. They made the third attempt. When did they make this third attempt? On 17th December 1903. Okay, on 17th December 1903, Orville Wright. Okay, Orville Wright took the third attempt. And he flew it for 12 seconds. That was a success. 12 seconds. 12 seconds means it's not even if you have a chocolate in your mouth, that's the time. Opening the wrapper, keeping the chocolate in your mouth. It may take hardly around 10 seconds for that. That was the time. So that was the first successful flight in the air. Now, they improved the flight further. And in 1904, Wilbur Wright, the other brother, he took the flight, and this lasted for about 5 minutes. In 1903, Orville Wright took a flight on a flyer. It lasted 12 seconds. That was the first successful ever flight happened on this world. They brought it back, improved it further, took another year. They worked on that for another year, and in 1904, with flyer on the same downhill track, Wilbur Wright flew it for 5 minutes. So they were improving, isn't it? They were improving. And they didn't stop it there. This was the first aeroplane. So which was the first aeroplane? Flyer was the first aeroplane that was designed, operated, tested and used by Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright, and that came into existence in the year 1903. After trying with engineless flights of gliders in 1900 and 1902. Okay, they tried with different kinds of gliders without engine, and when they became successful with this particular thing, we can control the air in the aeroplane in the air. Controlling the aeroplane in the air was the toughest task, isn't it? So once they got a solution for that, they decided to design engines which can lift aeroplanes into the air. So as to achieve the required air speed, they even made downhill tracks. From the top of this, from here, the aeroplane will be allowed to run down, so that by the time they reach somewhere here, it will achieve enough speed to get into the air. Before 1903, they made 2 attempts. The first one was a failure. Second one even almost crashed. The plane almost crashed. Crashed means everything collapsed. They were lucky that they were not dead. Okay. So in 1903, on 17th December, Orville Wright flew flyer for 12 seconds. That was the first ever aeroplane. They improved that further, and in next year, Wilbur Wright flew it for 5 minutes. So this is from where all the airplanes or helicopters or whatever, jumbo jets, everything have come from this particular thing. The flyer, which was designed, developed, made, used, tested, done, everything by Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright in the year 1903 on December 17th. Right? So that is a lesson we have to learn, and now we will go on to the question answer part related to this particular lesson. Okay, the read and understand the part from this lesson. Right? Fine, children. So now we have already completed the lesson regarding the first aeroplane, and we have come on to the read and understanding session. So here, read the following sentences and write T for the true statements and F for the false statements. So here we have 5 statements given over there. What we need to do is read the sentences given, check with what we have learned in the class, and if they are right or agreeing with the statement, then write a T. If they do not agree, we need to write a F. F means false, T means true. Okay, so in simple terms, we can say this is a true or false question. Right? Now, shall we go on to the first statement? 1. The first aircraft designed by the Wright brothers was flown as a kite. We have read this in the lesson. No, the initial stages when the Wright brothers made the aeroplane. They were more like gliders, and they were flown just like what we do with the kites, isn't it? Yeah. So what is a statement? Whether it is a true statement or a false statement? Yeah, it is a true statement. Okay. So the first aircraft designed by the Wright brothers was flown like a kite. Now, the second statement. The Wright brothers spent hours observing gliders. So they flew gliders first, and then they spent long time observing gliders or birds. In the lesson we saw it as birds, no? Yeah, when they shot into the air, when they were flying, when they were taking the turns. Wright brothers observed how they adjust their wings, and later on how the birds adjust their tails also, isn't it? So this statement is a false statement because the Wright brothers didn't spend time observing gliders, but they observed birds and tried to bring those techniques onto the gliders, isn't it? So what is a statement? It's a false statement. It's a false statement. Third one. In 1901, the Wright brothers flew the smallest glider. In 1901, the Wright brothers flew the smallest glider. So what was the size or weight of the glider that they tried to fly in the year 1901? In the year 1900, they successfully flew a glider which was which had a wingspan of 17 feet and a weight of 50 pounds. And in 1901, Wright brothers tried to fly another one which was 100 pounds weight, and it couldn't lift into the air. The wings couldn't help the glider to lift into the air, and it spinned and crashed, isn't it? So which one was the smallest one? The one they flew in the year 1900 was the smallest one, and one they tried to fly in the year 1901 was the biggest one, isn't it? So that was not the smallest glider the Wright brothers tried to fly in the year 1901. So what is the answer? It's a false statement, isn't it? So in 1901, the Wright brothers flew the biggest glider. No, even bigger than that. They even made, in the year 1904. They flew biggest one with a wingspan of 32 feet. Yeah. The Wright brothers built an uphill track to launch the flyer. So what was flyer? Yeah, the 700-pound weighing engine that they have designed and made for the aircraft was named as a Flyer, and they fixed it to an aircraft also that was also named Flyer. And what did they build to make it run, make it fly? That was a downhill track, isn't it? That was a downhill track. The aeroplane was stationed on top of the mountain, the hill, and through the slope down, they run the aeroplane so that after running on the track for a while, it could achieve enough, yes, air speed to take off into the air, isn't it? Yeah. So what they made there was a down track, and now they say it was an uphill track. So is the statement right or wrong? Is the statement right or wrong? It's a wrong statement, isn't it? It's a wrong statement, and so we have to mark it F here, right? It's marked F. In 1904, the flight of the powered aircraft lasted more than 5 minutes. Yeah. Wilbur Wright flew the second successful flight, and that lasted for more than 5 minutes, isn't it? Yeah, so that is a true statement. Okay, so shall we check it once? Yes. Right. So the first aircraft designed by the Wright brothers was flown like a kite is a true statement. The Wright brothers spent hours observing gliders is a wrong statement because they observed birds. In 1901, the Wright brothers flew the smallest glider is a wrong statement because the smallest glider was flown in the year 1900. The Wright brothers built an uphill track to launch the Flyer is a wrong statement because they made a downhill track to fly the Flyer. In 1904, the flight of the powered aircraft lasted more than 5 minutes is a true statement because when Wilbur Wright took the Flyer, it lasted for more than 5 minutes. Isn't it? Yeah. So now I'll keep the screen the same for you to read the sentences and understand them. Okay? Fine, children. Now we'll move on to the next question. Read and understand. Check the correct answer. The Wright brothers spent hours together observing. 4 options are given there: clouds, birds, helicopters, kites. So have they got something to learn from the kites? There were the clouds. There was obviously nothing. Helicopters. There were no helicopters then, no. The Wright brothers invented aeroplane first, and after a long time, helicopters were invented, isn't it? Okay. Kites, there was no purpose. So the purpose was with the birds, right? So Wright brothers spend a lot of time observing birds. So birds is the right answer, and I will put a tick mark on the birds, right? The Flyer was the first flown for 12 seconds in. The Flyer was the first flown for 12 seconds in which year? 1903, isn't it? Yeah. So we have learned about only up to 1904 in the lesson. In 1904, Flyer was flown for around 5 minutes. Okay. So before that, Wilbur Wright flew on the same flyer for 12 seconds in the year 1903. So that is the right answer. So both the sentences are here. I will keep the screen for a minute. You can read them and understand it. Okay, now we'll move on to the next one. Answer the following questions. So here we have got some questions from this lesson and we need to find the answers for this. Okay. So shall we go with the first question then? Why did the Wright brothers arch the tips of the wings of their first aircraft? Why did the Wright brothers arch the tips of the wings of their first aircraft? So we have seen that in the lesson that the square-shaped edges of the wings were turned into arches, isn't it? So why did they do that? They arched the tip of their glider wings slightly to control its balance and movement. So the Wright brothers arched the tips of the glider wings slightly to control its balance and movement. So that particular change was done on the glider wings to improve its controlling, isn't it? Yeah, so as to improve its control, it was done. Right? Yeah. Now the second question. We'll go for the second question. Why was the shape of the glider wings changed? Why was the shape of the glider wings changed? The Wright brothers thought that they could change the shape of the wings of the glider to fly it successfully. So they thought that if they change the wings, it can improve the controls, and if they can improve the controls, it can definitely fly successfully. Okay. So the Wright brothers thought they could change the shape of the wings of the glider to fly it successfully, right? Now we will go on to the third question. Where was a big full-sized glider tested? So where did they test fly a full big flyer, a glider? So where was a big full-sized glider tested? A big full-sized glider was tested at Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. So the big size glider was tested at Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. So that was a place. See, we have seen that place now. It was sandy. There was a lot of wind over there with some hills on the other side. Plenty of open place over there so that they can fly it easily and carefully, isn't it? Yeah, so the big full-size glider was tested at Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. Okay. Now we will go for the fourth question. What was the weight of the biggest glider ever flown in 1901? What was the weight of the biggest glider ever flown in 1901? So what was the weight of it? The weight of the biggest glider ever flown in 1901 was 100 pounds. Okay. The weight of the biggest glider ever flown in 1901 was 100 pounds. And we have read that in the class. It didn't take off. Do you remember? Yeah, they tried to take off that. It didn't Chekhov. Okay. Yeah. So these are the first 4 questions. Now I'll keep the screen the same for a minute for you to read these answers once again. And once you complete that, we will go on to the next set of questions. Okay, so now we'll move on to the next set of questions. So the fifth question is, what was the name of the first motor powered aeroplane? So what was the name of the first motor powered aeroplane? Okay, what was the name of the first motor powered aeroplane? The name of the first motor powered aeroplane was the Flyer. So what was the name of the first motor powered aeroplane? The Flyer. Okay. Now the sixth question. Who first flew the motor powered aeroplane for more than 5 minutes? Yeah, Orville Wright flew it in 1903 for around 12 seconds, and Wilbur Wright flew it for about 5 minutes, isn't it, in 1904? Yeah. Wilbur Wright first flew the motor powered aeroplane for more than 5 minutes. Okay. Wilbur Wright first flew the motor powered aeroplane for more than 5 minutes. So these are the 2 questions that remained in this. So I'll keep the screen the same for a while for you to read them. And then we will move on to the next one. We have HOTS here. We have a HOTS. So the question is, how did love for adventure and belief in themselves help the Wright brothers to invent the aeroplane? How did love for adventure and belief in themselves help the Wright brothers to invent the aeroplane? Despite various setbacks and difficulties, the Wright brothers went ahead with their adventures and completed the invention of aeroplane. So in the lesson we have come to know that they failed a lot of times. Many times they faced failure, but they didn't set back, isn't it? They didn't get back with their efforts. They wanted to make it, that's it. At any cost, they have to make it. That was what they felt, and they achieved it. And finally, they made a full-fledged motor-run, manually controlled aeroplane, isn't it? So despite various setbacks and difficulties, setbacks means failure. Setbacks means failure and difficulties. They crashed even, sometimes they might have got injuries also. The Wright brothers went ahead with their adventures and completed the invention of an aeroplane. Right? So that is the lesson part that we have completed the lesson, the question answers and the other exercises related to the lesson. With the grammar part, we will meet in the next class. Okay? So till then, take care. Bye-bye.